My goodness.
Okay.
What is this?
I think the second word is aspiration. But I don't know what this first word is. This is really bad. But I mean, you know what they say about us doctors and our handwriting.
Yes, I know. But it does cause some serious problems, as in this case, because we should be coding the last disease or condition on the list as the underlying cause of death. Yeah. But how can we do that if we cannot make it out? And so for this patient, if we don't consult the doctor to clarify information, his death will be coded as having a seizure disorder of some unknown cause, and that would not be very informative. And besides, it would not be the real cause. It may not be the real cause for his death.
That's really serious, because then that would mean that all of the data on the computer is completely inaccurate.
Exactly. And then there are other problems like distinguishing between two words that look similar, like infection and infarction, cerebro and cardio, valvular and vascular.
Okay, I see your point, but what other problems are there?
Other problems? Take a look at this one. We all know that doctors use abbreviations to save time on writing. And I mean, after all, I've been in this job for so long, I know that doctors use HDN for hypertension. But CVA can mean cardiovascular arrest, cerebrovascular accident, and depending on which it is, it will affect the underlying cause of death.
Well, yes, that would definitely be a problem. But why not just call the doctor then to clarify things?
Well, we definitely do that. But as you can imagine, it is very time-consuming and tedious. And not only for us, but also for the doctors. Ideally, we should not have this problem. Only in extreme cases, we should really need to consult with the doctor.
That's true. Very true.
And then there are problems like illogical sequences, or when the doctor writes two conditions on the same line.
But I mean, okay, I can see how that could be a problem as well, but once all the information is there, the coders have what they need, right?
No. You see, we have to follow the rules as set by the World Health Organization in these ICD manuals, okay? Look, take a look at this certificate. Yes, this is a perfect example of an illogical sequence. Line A says this woman died from hyperosmotic non-ketotic syndrome. Line B says diabetes mellitus. Line C says gangrene of foot. The main thing is that the sequence does not flow. So let us assume that this condition is a consequence of diabetes.
Okay. I can see a point. All right.
Can you tell me that diabetes is a consequence of gangrene of the left foot, which is what I made this out to be in line C?
Definitely not.
Okay, but since we know, though, that gangrene is something that can be caused by diabetes, can't we just choose diabetes as the underlying cause and call it a day?
No, we cannot do that. You see, we have to be standardized in how we determine the underlying cause of death. And so we have to use the ICD rules. In this case, the rules will lead us to diabetes as the underlying cause, but it does not always work out that way.
Wow, you know, I never realized the way that information is written could have such an effect. Are there any other issues, or should I even ask?
Other issues? There's the issue of the amount of details that go on a certificate.
Wait, like what?
Well, if someone dies from cancer, the doctor should write details about the type of cancer and the site. And if the person died from, let's say, lung cancer that started at another site, that primary site should always be recorded, even if the primary growth was removed years before the patient died. With death from injuries, we need to know the geographic location. Home, work, street, if it was an accident, suicide, homicide. If the person died from injuries sustained in a car accident, we need to have, the certificate should have details of what the car collided with. Another car, a truck, a post at the side of the road. You know, we need to know if the deceased was a pedestrian or if he was in the car. And if he was in the car, if he was a driver or a passenger, you know, we need to...
My goodness. You know, before I had this conversation with you, if I had done up a death certificate, I would have been flagged for so many queries just like these.
Right.
And I don't recall all the details when I was a med student or an intern for that matter.
No, same here, which probably means that there are a number of doctors out there who don't fully understand what is required of them when they're filling out these certificates of death.
That's right.
You know what, I'm going to make it a priority in the very near future to organize some training workshops because people need to understand this, and you know that I'll be calling.
Here we see that the data is only as good as the information provided on the death certificate. Doctors Jones and Reed's conversation with Ms. Blackwell brought up many issues that affect the quality of the data in the database. Let's look at these again. In terms of do's and don'ts in completing the death certificates, you should do the following. Do use clear handwriting and write in block letters. Record diagnoses as precisely as possible while being concise. It always helps to use additional sources of information such as laboratory reports, autopsy reports, patient records, and medical history. In terms of the type of detail needed, for example neoplasms, you should describe the site and whether they are benign or malignant. If a metastasized tumor caused death, then the primary site should always be indicated, even though the primary growth may have been removed long before death. If the primary site is unknown, this should be stated on the certificate. For deaths due to post-operative complications or complications of a medical procedure, always include the condition for which the operation was performed and when the operation was performed. If the deceased was pregnant or died within 42 days postpartum, this should also be noted on the death certificate, even if the pregnancy was unrelated to the cause of death. When deaths occur from injuries, you should record the geographic location where the event took place, such as on the highway, the road, a beach, or a park. Indicate whether the injury sustained was due to an accident, vehicular or otherwise, a suicide, or a homicide. For injuries sustained in a car accident, you should include information on what the car collided with, for example, a truck or a motorbike, and whether the deceased was a pedestrian, a passenger, or the driver. Things to avoid when completing the death certificate include using abbreviations and being vague. You should never write the mode of dying, such as cardiac arrest, as the sole condition on the certificate. Avoid illogical sequences when going down from line A through to D. And avoid recording more than one condition or disease on a line.
The purpose of this rigor in completing the certificate is that we ultimately want to have an accurate recording of the underlying cause of death. This is the disease or injury that started the train of morbid events leading directly to death, or the circumstances of the accident or violence that produced the fatal injury. Remember, the information entered on the medical certificate of death helps to define what diseases and medical conditions exist in each of our general populations.
Now let's see what the findings were from the review done by Drs. Reed, Jones, and Ms. Blackwell.
So Dr. Peter's been telling me that you've been working very hard on getting to the bottom of the whole Boynton rubber plant issue.
Yes, I have, along with our national epidemiologist, Dr. Jones, and the head of the Health Information Unit, Ms. Blackwell.
Well, let's get right to it. Doctors, please, tell us your findings.
Okay. In summary, we found that there were 20% more deaths in Boynton District for the past 5 years when compared to the preceding 5 years. And workers from the rubber plant represent 5% of the deaths for the district.
Really?
Yes, well, when we tabulated the underlying causes of death for the past 5 years, we got diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, cancers, and respiratory diseases as the top 4.
But that sounds like the same causes we see nationally.
That's true.
Okay, well, what we did was a literature review, and we found a number of articles that indicated that these causes of death are consistent with the effects of air pollutants exacerbating pre-existing conditions and causing premature death.
So, what is the bottom line?
The bottom line is that there's a high prevalence of problems like malnutrition, high blood pressure, and diabetes among young people living in this district. These should be addressed in their own right. However, the evidence of higher death rates in younger age groups than the national figures put together with the data on immediate causes being respiratory problems indicates that the smoke and pollution may be combining with people's existing problems and causing them to die prematurely.
Well, the data can't say that conclusively, but it certainly gives enough evidence to get our own investigation started.
It may also be enough to force the plant owners to provide protective gear for their workers and to implement strategies that would safeguard the community against air pollution while the investigations are going on.
Exactly. I mean, more research does need to be done.
Indeed, the findings were very important and would have been discovered much faster had the certificates been completed properly. Basically, when completing a death certificate, ask yourself 2 questions. 1, what was the earliest disease or condition which, if removed, would have prevented death? And 2, what were the immediate steps between this underlying disease or condition and the one that ultimately resulted in death? The answers to these 2 questions are what should be recorded on a medical certificate of death.
Remember, good population-based morbidity data are not often available from other sources. As physicians completing medical death certificates, we have the opportunity and responsibility to complete the certificates to the best of our ability to ensure that mortality statistics reflect the best medical opinion.
We do hope that this video will be a valuable resource tool for you. If you need further information on this topic, please contact your Health Information Unit or Central Statistical Office where cause of death coding is done.
Remember, your action in correctly and accurately completing the medical certificate of death ultimately contributes to improving the health and wealth of the entire nation.